Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time. My first question to everyone is, how many times when you were a kid did you just lick the frosting off of a cake, or only pick the piece of the cake that had a flower on it, or even just your name on it? Anybody? Okay. Well, just as important as it is for a cake to look, to taste beautiful, it has to look just as good, correct?
Yeah.
Well, today I will be demonstrating and giving you tips and tricks on how to properly decorate a cake. There are a lot of different types of techniques, different types of tips to use, and a various amount of buttercreams, fillings, ganaches to put on your cake that will make your cake look just as professional as Buddy Velastro from Cake Boss. So today I have for you a red velvet cake with a buttercream icing. Now a lot of people start asking, okay, well, what is buttercream? What is it made out of? You know, it sounds like it's just a whole bunch of butter. And technically, from the Webster's Dictionary definition, it is actually a sweet butter-based mixture used for decorating cakes, filling cakes. I mean, pretty much anything that you see that has to do with cake or a cupcake, that's what buttercream is used for. There are American Swiss meringue buttercreams, there are French meringues, and of course the classic and traditional American buttercream, which is actually one of the most simple buttercreams to use whenever you are baking, especially if you are a new baker. Now, with the American buttercream frosting, there pretty much is just a difference of the type of sugar that is used, the amount of butter, and the actual process in which buttercream is made. Now, as you can see in the video, she is making a traditional buttercream frosting. Now we're going to kind of skip through this a little bit and get to the good stuff. She's got a typical KitchenAid stand mixer. Not everyone has one of these, so you can use a hand mixer. It just takes a little bit longer. Now she's using room temperature softened butter. You can use sweetened or unsweetened butter. And the higher the fat content for the butter, the thicker and more stiff your butter will become. Now, as you notice, it starts out yellow, of course, because that's what butter looks like. But as you continuously beat the butter and add more air to it, you will end up with a more paler color, softer texture. Now, what she's doing is sifting icing sugar, or better known as powdered sugar, to allow more air to go into the powdered sugar, as well as making sure there are no lumps or anything like that, because of course you want a nice smooth buttercream whenever you're icing your cake. She's continuing to whip it. You add a couple of tablespoons of milk. You add your vanilla or any other flavoring that you would like to do. This would be the best time if you wanted to do like a Bailey's buttercream or caramel or anything like that. This would be the perfect time to add your different flavorings to the buttercream, but it's still the traditional buttercream. That's the milk there. And you just whip it until it's a very nice, light, thick consistency. Light and fluffy, very smooth, easy to go through the piping bag. Which brings us to our next important point. The piping tools and tips. So you want to make sure that you have a piping bag. This one has a little bit of icing in it already, and it's got my small nozzle for writing happy birthday or names or anything like that. Very small decor. If you wanted to do lacing or anything like that, you would use a small nozzle. Now, I also have a small star, closed star actually, for piping rosettes and things like that, which is kind of what you see on the sides. I just did a little bit just to have it ready. You've got the more intricate tips, which is, this one is a Russian piping tip. These are a lot of fun, but you would want to use a thicker buttercream in order for you to have a better consistency with what you're decorating your cake with. We've also had, just all different kinds of shapes and sizes, and the shapes and sizes each have a number on each nozzle. Now the nozzles are for you to know what type of design you're putting on it, whether it's a leaf or an open or closed star for a rosette. There are a million different things that you can do when it comes to cake decorating. There's really no wrong answer. You also want to make sure that you have an offset spatula, which I did not bring with me, but that, and you want to also make sure that you have parchment paper. Parchment paper is super important because it allows you to practice somewhere off of the cake, so just in case you do mess up, you're not messing up your end result. And as far as the piping bags go, if you can't get piping bags, which a lot of times I like to use the reusable bags, so you just wash them out, put them in the dishwasher, they're really good to go. You can also use the non-reusable ones. You can also use a Ziploc bag, especially if you're just beginning and you don't have as much of a baking repertoire. It's very simple to just cut off the tip of a Ziploc bag, throw your nozzle in there, and have at it. All right, when it comes to technique, that is one of the things that tends to slow people down, especially when it comes to being a new baker. Do not let this discourage you. Like I said, grab a piece of parchment paper and practice, practice, practice. One of the other good things about practicing your techniques, or one of the other things that you can do to practice your technique, is to buy a box of instant mashed potatoes. You add water or milk or whatever, and you make it to the consistency that you would like, and you just practice with that. You can color it, you can use all different types of tips. It still allows you to have the advantage of practicing without wasting all of your butter and sugar and all of your other ingredients, and waiting until you actually got it down pat before you actually start decorating your cake. So when it comes to piping techniques, you want to make sure that your bag is completely sealed. One thing too is, whenever you're filling your piping bags, you can see it pretty much filled it all the way to the top, and that's not good because then it squeezes out the top of the bag and you get a mess everywhere. And especially with gel food coloring, that stuff gets everywhere and it's very hard to get out. But gel food coloring is actually best for decorating cakes because it doesn't change the consistency of your buttercream. When you are using your piping bag, you can use a piping tie. You want to apply light pressure, and you want to make sure that you are stabilizing your writing hand with your other hand. Now, you don't want to touch the cake or the parchment paper. Really? No. Sorry. Technical difficulties. This is another reason why you want to make sure that you write on parchment paper, because if you end up filling your bag at least halfway and you've got an air gap in it, you want to make sure that you squeeze your piping bag so that all the air comes out before you have a big splat of frosting everywhere, just like a sorry, I'm having technical difficulties with my buttercream, and that's probably because I left it in the fridge for too long. Now, as this is defrosting, I can say that buttercream tends to last in the fridge for about 3 weeks. If you could seal it properly, you just have to make sure that it gets completely to room temperature before you start decorating. Let's see if my other piping tip is better. There we go. Now, when you're piping, you don't want to touch the cake. You want to let the icing fall onto the cake, and then icing's not good on this one either. Apply just enough pressure that it stops. Now, when it comes to piping rosettes or anything like that, you want to make sure, especially with the Russian piping tips, that you keep as far away from the cake and let the icing kind of do its job, as well as using your turntable rather than leaning over the cake or moving around yourself. Let the turntable do the work for you. It's a lot less strenuous. Are there any questions? I hope that this helped you with any type of baking, decorating, cake decorating tips and tricks that you might not have known previously. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
You kind of didn't completely explain, but what's the offset spatula for?
Okay, so the offset spatula, one can be used for scooping your buttercream into your piping bag, but it's mainly used for spreading the buttercream onto your cake, to do either a crumb coat, which is just a very thin layer of buttercream, right before, and you throw it into the fridge and then you do your final coat, or just to kind of smooth things out over the top. If you want to actually take something off that you did put onto the cake that you messed up, you can use the offset spatula to take it off gently and then smooth out the cake, and it's kind of like an etch-a-sketch moment. Any other questions?
How did you learn to do this?
I actually started baking when I was 8 years old. I've been doing it on and off for a very long time. Normally I'm a lot more prepared with my icing, but it was just trial and error. A lot of trial and error, which came in the mashed potatoes mix, because once I started using $100 worth of butter a month, my mom was like, okay, you're gonna have to pay for this now. So the mashed potatoes thing works really, really well, especially if you want to get into professional baking and you want to practice your technique.
If you don't have that tool that twists around, can you use a bowl that twists around yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started, before I got a turntable, I would actually just get a bowl and a large plate and put my cake on the plate and just turn the plate itself, and it still did the same thing. I mean, there's so many different ways around baking. It's absolutely kind of amazing, which is one of the reasons why I say when it comes to cake decorating or just baking cakes in general, when it comes to food, the possibilities are endless. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
One moment, please, like to give you what we have.